Hi, guys, and welcome to a new episode of Questions on My Mind. This is a really important topic. It's all about trauma, stress, and the mind-body connection. And I want you to stay tuned to the end, not just because this is a vitally important topic, but also because my guest, Juliette Karaman, has an offer for you guys at the end, and something that you will want to um, take advantage of. So stay tuned for that. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Here we go. Welcome, 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 everybody. You are in for a treat today. I have got the wonderful Juliette Karaman with me today, and you're going to realize how big this is in a minute when I get her to tell you a little bit more about herself. But as I've been talking a lot about recently in my posts, in my newsletter, wherever. I've been looking a lot into trauma and the mind-body connection, and basically what we can do about the stresses that we carry and how it affects our bodies. Um, because I think we have in abstract this term that stress is a killer, but we don't really understand what that means. So, before we get started, as I always say, I'm going to dive deep in, straight in, but please do like, share, and subscribe and comment because it would be interesting to know what you think about what Juliette's saying or what the conversation brings out. And it just gives me some feedback as to where to go next on future episodes. Um, this whole topic of trauma, stress, mind body connection is so big and vast. So we may dot around a bit, or maybe it's more than one episode, but stay tuned because it's a deep topic. I think it's an extremely important topic that we should all have a lot more knowledge about and a lot more understanding about. But welcome, Juliette.
Thank you for having me, darling. Um,
Thank you for coming. I am honored.
well,
So,
I'm thrilled to be with you since trauma and especially sexual trauma and the hidden impact of that in our lives as women, that it may have affected us, but how it affects our children, our relationships, because oftentimes we bury stuff like this. Our psyche isn't quite ready to process it, or we feel guilty about it and then we just forget about it. So this is what happened to me, and this is what I've now helped thousands of other women and couples with, to really dismantle what it means to have trauma, how it lives in the body, how it starts showing up as disease in your body, and how we may not even know that we have things on board, and we don't always
mm,
have to talk about big trauma, like seeing someone get killed or having sexual trauma, but just it might also be the way that someone looked at you or touched you in the tube, or in public transport, like put their hand up your dress, things like that leave an imprint that it gets stuck in the nervous system, and then that can create disease. So I'm passionate about this. I've been doing this in some realm for 15 years, really, relationships and sexual consciousness and sexuality. And before that, I was a SENCO, so special educational needs coordinator, working with kids on the spectrum. So it's four of my kids, two of them have dyslexia. So it's always interested me, this whole psychology and recognizing that our brains and bodies are just wired so differently, and no one is wrong or right, but it's just like, oh, how can we just like learn how to tweak things a little bit, get those cross wires gone again so that they can connect and that we can
Yeah.
actually recognize that it's just an easier path.
So, yeah, because this takes me back to because I've been listening on Audible to um, Bessel van der Kolk,
Mhm.
the book
Hello,
about
Dutchie.
talk,
Hello. Yes.
and I've not finished it yet, but The Myth of Normal,
Hmm.
Gabor Mate. And I know I've been waxing lyrical about these two books, but they are absolutely brilliant.
I've
And
worked with both of them. They're
yeah,
good people. They're both mentors of mine. Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
um, their knowledge is so vast. Um,
Yes.
and they talk about, well, Gabor talks about big trauma, big T trauma, and little t trauma. Because when I use that word, I don't want people to necessarily think it always has to be something extreme.
It
It
doesn't.
doesn't. And it could also just be prolonged stress.
Mhm.
But what I found fascinating, and I do want to get to how we can help ourselves at some point, because this can sound or feel quite um, heavy and, well, how do we deal with all of this? Is there any hope? It can start to feel like that when you're delving into this.
And it doesn't have to be. I'm going to
Good.
really reject you just for 1 second because trauma, I think it's so overused, and people are like, it's got to be heavy. This is what you're saying too, right? That people
Yeah.
fear that. But if we just think about trauma as something that happened to us that we haven't let go of, we haven't let go of in our body, and it's still creating a memory, or we still get like a flashback of something, or it lodges into our body so that we're still experiencing it. So, but it doesn't define us. But most people say that you see someone get hurt or get hit by a car. Most people would be like, "Oh my God, that's a massive trauma," right? But a lot of people would just move through that and go on with their lives. Some people don't. And then all of a sudden they start getting fatigued or they start having flashbacks and they're not sleeping well. And that is what trauma can do. It's just something that's stuck in our bodies, that's stuck in our psyche. It happened too fast, too soon for us to really recognize. And there are loads of ways to get through it. So it's not a massive undertaking that we have to spend years in talk therapy or somatics. We can actually move through this quite quickly. But just recognize that this may be happening underneath all the healthcare checks that you might have done, etc. It's like, oh, there might actually be some trauma there.
So when you say we can move through this quite quickly, does that depend on how long you've been carrying this trauma? Because I'm just wondering if it's lodged and you're not aware of it, and it may start off as fatigue or um, trouble sleeping, that kind of thing. But presumably, if you live in that kind of state, which is what I'm feeling I have done, I've had my own
Yes.
health challenges, not and always been looking at the body. Like, why is it doing this? Why does my stomach do this? Why does this happen? And it's only in the last sort of 2 or 3 years working with Liz, who's brilliant, that I've started to make the connection with stress and trauma.
Absolutely.
But when Gabor and Bessel talk about um, the body part of it, they do talk about things that have led to sort of quite serious illnesses.
Yeah.
And is that dependent on how ingrained it gets because you've been carrying it for so long, or could it be acute? Um,
I think it can be both. I've seen both, and I'm sure they've they've seen both as well. A lot of people, it does build up a little bit and we forget about it, but then all of a sudden it will show up. All of a sudden the hip is a little bit tight or everything else. And then we go to the physio and we try all kinds of other things. And then there might just be a little memory, or there might be a little hint of a something, a little memory coming through somewhere. And this is where I often probe into people's minds a little bit and creating a safe space for them to open up, to have that space that all of a sudden we're in a session doing something, working on something completely different, and things come through, and she's like, oh my God, I just remember that my father used to touch me in the shower. And this is like a woman who's 56. And you're like, yes, this was an image of you doing of that happening when you were 5. But it's to create that safe space so that these things can come up. And then it doesn't have to be massive. I mean, there is obviously some like emotional stuff that comes up. Oh my God, and have I had this all my life? I didn't realize. And you know, and then a lot of you start linking a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's the beauty is like if you let yourself, I split any experience up into four categories. So there's an emotion, there's an image, there's a thought, and there's body sensation. So if you allow yourself to see that image, whatever happened, right? My father touching me in the shower when I was 5, and actually really experience it. So to duplicate it and just really allow yourself to feel it in that moment. What's the thought that's going through your head? It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I've suppressed this for 56 years or whatever, how many years. Think that thought. What's the emotion that comes up? It's like, oh, actually a bit of guilt and shame and and the body sensation is tightness in my chest. So if you allow yourself to feel those things, because what we don't like doing is feeling these things
Mm.
because it's scary. It doesn't take more than 90 seconds to move through that. And then another layer comes up. So it's just like peeling the onion away. It's like, oh, okay, so this came up. Now what's coming up now? So let's go through those 4 elements again: image, thought, body, sensation, emotion. Ah, this comes up. And then every time you go through it, and usually in about 5 or 6 layers, the very negative things that they've thought, they've just become very neutral. It's like, oh, okay, it's just something that happened to me. It doesn't really define me anymore. I'm not super angry at him. It's, you know, whatever. So you just don't get, you're not in that stuck state anymore. And it's a little bit, if you think about animals, when you see, say you see a deer in out in nature and it's getting chased by a wild hyena, whatever.
Mm.
It runs, right?
Yeah.
Runs really quickly. And then afterwards, you see it shake, 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 shake. It shakes, it moves it through their body. When we're in a car accident, we'll just say, oh, where are your insurance papers? Or give me your number so that we can exchange. And we actually don't shake. So that trauma
I
of the
do.
shock. Yeah. Well, and
I think we do. We just dismiss it.
we
Although
dismiss
there's
it.
been a
We
few
may not.
times, yeah, where there's been sort of near misses, and I can feel that I was.
Which is great. That's the because that's our nervous system, right? Our body is made to do this. And this is why we have trauma release exercises that actually have your body start to shake and just move it all the way through. And the emotions come up and the wailing comes up. And then all of a sudden it's like, ah, we're out, we're through.
Okay. So, mm, we, right at the beginning, there's when I say right at the beginning, both, it's more Gabor that talks about this. Gabor talks about stress or trauma being in the sperm of the father.
Mm,
Um, stress and trauma being picked up from the mother. Um, so there's preconceptional stress, gestational trauma, whatever she's feeling or whatever's going on while you're in the womb, and then um, stress and trauma in developmental years. So before we even get started with what happens to us in life, most of us are potentially coming in with these stressors that we've picked up that
Pretty high.
actually don't
Yeah.
necessarily have anything to do with us, but we've picked them up.
Mhm.
And apparently that changes our our DNA, not our DNA, but our genetic expression, if you like, and the way that we in turn perhaps deal with stresses when they come up in our own life. It changes our physiology. So how, where am I going with this? It almost feels as though, and this is where I go to the negative sort of way of looking at things, but it feels like we come in with one arm tied behind our back before we've even started our own lives.
I think, yeah, part of us we do. And I think if you also hear it's like we're here to break the generational curse or the generation tie or whatever, but oftentimes when we do the work, like I know my mother was raped, my sister, my, and on and on and on, and my grandmothers both. And with me, it stopped. So my daughters don't have this, don't carry this because I've done the work, and they're also being careful because I'm
Yeah.
quite vocal about it. But it's that's where actually we can break that cycle. But it's interesting. I was working with a lady whose parents are from Ethiopia and brought up in America, very successful, very, very, amazing business, etc. And she came to me, didn't have a lot of intimacy in her relationship and couldn't understand why. And then she was doing really well. And there was also things with her weight. She was losing too much weight. And we pinpointed it to actually because her parents were from Ethiopia and there was so much famine, she found it really difficult to put on weight subconsciously. That's her subconscious. Again, that's her generational trauma that's coming through because of the famine that was there. So that those are the markers that she's carrying. So it was just really, really interesting to watch
Yeah.
that, that we actually unpicked that. And she's like, oh, it's a shame because they couldn't eat. So part of me is like, if I now, because she just kept forgetting to eat and the weight just kept dropping off. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not healthy anymore. She's like, oh, I just forget to eat.
That
Um,
reminds me of Isabel Benarus as well. She's another one who talks a lot about traumas that your parents may have, or grandparents or whoever may have had and weren't able to deal with, but you're presented with the opportunity
that's it.
to deal with it.
And I mean,
Wow.
if you see now
Yeah,
what's happening in the world, I mean, there's so much going on that you're like, we're actually creating some generational trauma for years to come.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, so we have that.
Questions on my mind. I love it.
Yeah,
We're
so
going
we have
everywhere.
that, but then we're, like you're saying, we're creating, um, we're living in extremely stressful times
Yeah,
without any generational stuff that we're also dealing with.
been aware of. Yeah.
Um, so this is going to be a very all-encompassing big question, but if we're dealing with what we're carrying as we come in, then what we're picking up as we're going along, trying to perhaps heal that, but we're still living in a very stressful environment, which could be re-triggering us the whole time or creating new stresses, how how do we thrive in that kind of arena?
Well, it kind of feels like it's a catch 22, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a mind fuck if you know be terrible. But it's you just kind of think like, God, am I ever going to get rid of this or am I ever going to live a normal life? But I think that is part of really of the awakening of the recognizing what are we here for, right? What is it that's really important? Because we're so much in that rat race of growing up, universities, getting your first job, house, kids, if that's your career, if that's your path, right? So we tick all the boxes, and then at one point it just comes a point where it's like you're not so, or you might have like a lot, tiny little window of opportunity that you're not so busy being busy.
Mm,
Actually, just feels like, what am I doing this for? Is this really what makes me happy? Is this really what fulfills me? And I think people start talking about midlife crisis at that point. But it's like, is it actually midlife crisis or is it really where we've seen that, oh, we have all these stresses and we have all these things that are setting us up because I never think that anything is we need to heal anything because no one's broken, right? But we can peel away the layers and then see, oh, what triggers us and why is that happening? And let's move through it so that we can get to a place that we're not so triggered and that we don't have so much stress carrying around. So I just love that I just see it as an onion skin. We pull away another layer and we kind of like see another layer again. It's like, oh, okay, I'm back there, but in a different spot. And I'm not so triggered. But this
yeah.
is why we see so many women step out of a really high stress career at one point because they're just recognizing that they want to take it a little bit easier. I see a lot of people going back to the countryside after having kids and they're off in university, they actually just want to slow down a little bit more.
Do we need to? Because a lot of the writers like Anita Mohani and others
Yeah.
had to have a serious illness or something that stops them in their tracks that causes them to then look for that healing.
Do we have to hit but
So, yeah, I'm wondering, presumably,
rock bottom, right?
we do have to have some sort of discomfort or something to actually make us sit up and listen. Otherwise, we just carry on in our busyness.
For
Pres-
me, definitely. I know there are few people. I think Stephen Burgess is probably the only one, and he talks about the vagus nerve a lot. So he's probably the only one that hasn't had a traumatized childhood, and he talks about that as well, because Gabor Mate, obviously, yes, with his parents being in concentration camps, and he really talks about that. So it's for me myself, I had to hit rock bottom. I spent 9 months in and out of a hospital, not being able to walk, not being able to go anywhere because I kept fainting. And that was my body telling me to like stop. And it had given me little nudges and I just didn't listen until one day I was in Portobello Market in London and I was on the floor with my bag and everything all over the street. And this flower lady's like, "Hey love, how you doing? Are you okay?" I was like, "What happened?" She said, you fainted." And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse until I really slowed down and started taking care of myself.
So, how can we, instead of, because what you could have done is just stayed on the trajectory of why do I keep fainting? What do I need to take to stop this from happening?
Yeah, I
You
tried
could have
that.
remained focused on the body, or did you
I
do that
did
for a
that for
while?
about 9 months, and then I recognized that that wasn't going to get me anywhere. They implanted a heart monitor. I was in hospital with MRIs and brain scans pretty much every week. We did 9 months of that, and I actually couldn't walk unaided from one side of the room to another. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. So that's when you start recognizing it's like, okay, there must be something else out there, and it must be I'm obviously there's something else there, and that's when I started finding out about unhealed trauma, about sexual trauma that I had when I was 18 that I'd buried for, gosh, pretty 30 years or so. Yeah.
Okay. I can see how you might bury that if something happens in developmental years that's a sexual trauma, because especially the earlier it happens. But did you really think you buried it if it happened in at 18?
Let's say it this way, I didn't remember it, or I didn't consciously remember it. It was only until I actually I felt the impact of a flogger, actually, of someone hitting my back, and I recognized that my body was holding on to something, and then all the memories started coming back.
Wow.
It's the subconscious is really a really interesting place. I mean, I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm an EMDR therapist alongside a coach. Um, so we know that the subconscious, we don't actually know how we breathe, right? Yes, we can know that. We do know scientifically, but it's not like every minute we think it's like, oh, inhale, exhale,
Mm,
inhale, exhale. What's happening to where's my oxygen go? I mean, that all gets done by the subconscious, right?
yeah.
So its job is really to protect us. So this is why people often have phobias of spiders or flying. Its job is to keep us safe. So something may have happened at one point in our life where it just thought it's not safe to feel that. So don't feel it. So get a trauma, get a phobia, get like, start sweating when you come near planes, or need to go to an MRI and find that really scary, one of my clients. But then when you can actually talk to the subconscious, either with hypnotherapy or with the four elements that I told you about, or with different things, we can talk to it and we can get it to recognize that it's safe now. I use my touch base signal, which is putting your thumb and your forefinger together really, really slowly, rubbing the fingers so you can feel every single ridge of your finger, and just noticing what's happening to your breath as you slowly put your fingers together, recognizing that you're safe now. There's no tiger out here, there's nothing attacking you. You are actually safe. And the more that you do this, and all it takes is like 40, 50 seconds, right? You can do this 2, 3 times a day. And then for minimum, I would say 30 to 90 days, because 90 days is really, people say 21 days is to get a habit, but 90 days is to really to be expert of it, really embodied.
Mm,
Then anytime that we have any fear and anxiety, all we need to do is just put the fingers together and the body recognize, oh, I'm rewiring the brain. This is my safety anchor. I feel safe doing this. So I'm okay. I'm not, there's no attacker. There's nothing. Because that's what it often is, right? With the release of adrenaline and everything else. But then if you can slow that nervous system down, if you can get it back on board by doing a kind of static anchor like this, and there are lots of different ones. This is just the way that I do it. It really trains our body like, hey, we're safe, we're okay here.
mm. So it sounds like in order for us to actually really feel, we need to do something that stops us long enough for what needs to come through to come through.
Pattern interrupt. Yeah.
Yeah. And could it be that for women, that pattern interrupt is when they get to perimenopause, maybe? like because it's just go, 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 get stuff done, but then your body starts doing things that are annoying and is that what gets you to think, or a lot of women to stop and think? And is that the point at which they actually do start to work on themselves and turn their lives around?
What's interesting, I see that in a lot of women, yes, of that age. But I'm also seeing, I mean, my kids are in, my eldest is 27 today. My 27, then second one will be 26 in August, and then the girls are 24 just now. And I actually see them working on it now already. And I don't know if that's because they've
Because
seen
they've got you.
I've done, or is it the generation I see? It's interesting. My clients are usually 45 plus to like 70. And then I get some young ones. Then I get some like 18 to like 25, 28. And then there's a gap between like 28 and like 44. So because they're often busy doing kids and careers and everything else. So, then intimacy and this kind of stuff just kind of gets put on the side, like you said.
Mm. And they were saying that, or Gabor was saying that it's women who generally suffer with autoimmune conditions. I think,
Yes.
is it 80% of people with autoimmune issues are women?
Mhm.
And I guess he's saying that comes from us. I'm not sure if it's just the pressure of being the nurturers, caregivers, um, what's expected of us, the pressures of being a woman in a, I don't really like the word patriarchal, because it has sometimes other connotations attached to it, but that's what Gabor was saying, that it's living in a patriarchal system that expects us to almost not consider ourselves, because everything out there and everybody else is important.
Right? I mean, how often, I mean, I remember having to teach my clients, and I remember myself having to learn. Yeah, gosh, I have four kids. I had four kids under 3 years' time, so you can imagine what it was like. And then I was with a man who had three children. So we had seven children. Like the very
Yeah.
close together, and seven different schools and seven different holidays. And it was just like managing it was like a full-time job. And of course I was thinking, it's like, oh, I need to, help them, etc., etc. It's like, no. Yeah, no wonder my body gave out. Yeah, good learning on everyone's side. But really recognizing it's like if we don't put that oxygen mask on ourselves, then we are going to burn out, and who are we going to help with that? All right, and I see that more and more and more where at first the kids might just kind of throw a wobbly. It's like, hey, but you've always taken care of us. It's like, yes, and now I need to make sure I can take care of myself.
Mm.
And that's oftentimes I see that, especially in career women, they're juggling a career and they're juggling the home. And however much the husband might help out, oftentimes it's still not so much 50-50. And then, the cooking, the washing, the home stuff as we probably carry a little bit more than half, definitely.
So that brings it back to it not just being about um, tr trauma, or big T, little t trauma, but also just the stresses of normal daily living and prolonged, um, if I'm thinking of women, being in that masculine, I've got to do this for that person, do that for that person, um, being in that energy
Hmm.
constantly for years on end.
Yeah. Completely, and where it's often seen as a virtue, like I can do it by myself. No, I don't need to ask for help. Well, actually asking for help is really something quite beautiful, but it's not that easy to do, right? Like
Yeah.
last night I came back from Amsterdam. We went to see my nephew and niece. It would have been my late sister's 60th birthday. So it was
Mm.
really emotional weekend. I saw the house that they had bought and I'd never seen it finished, and he's now just sold it. So I was really grateful to see it the last time. My daughters were with me. Last time we were in Holland, we were there for my spreading my parents' ashes, and then my daughter's boyfriend passed away that same day. So there were just a lot of layers, and I knew it would
Yeah.
be a really intense weekend, uh, beautifully connective, but also just like I knew I'd have a lot on my mind. So then my partner said, "Well, why don't I come pick you up from Heathrow?" And I said, "Yes, please." And then he called. He said, "Can I get you from outside?" And I was like, I was so tired, and I was just about to say yes, and I just said, "I can't. Can you?" He's like, "Oh, shall I come inside?" I said, "Yes, please." And but he just heard that, when he offered, like, "I'll come and pick you up from the pickup zone," I was like, "Oh." He's like, would you rather that I pick you up inside?" Like, yes. So he kind of preempted me, but normally I would have just said, "Oh, it's fine. I'll make, you'll just push through." But
Yeah.
having him be out there, and take the suitcase from me and just drive me home and say bye-bye to my girls because they were going back to London. It was just so nurturing, and I really felt nourished.
Mm.
And we're not used to that. Normally, we're like, "Oh, we'll take a cab. It's fine. We don't want to impose ourselves on anyone."
So how can we start training that muscle to ask for what we need?
It's actually, it's a really beautiful exercise to recognize, what do you need, right? Our needs are often, okay, we need a house, we need this, that. But then what are the emotional needs that we want? What are the physical needs? What are the desires? What are the things that we actually want in our lives? Who are the people that don't really add anything to us, that are draining our energy? And start becoming aware of that. And it might mean having some slightly difficult conversations with people, just saying, when they constantly bitch about others or when they're negative about others, just saying, "Hey, listen, it just drains my energy. I can't be around someone who does that. So if we want to continue being this, I'm going to just call you out every time that you start being negative about that."
Mm.
Or even notice where your kids or where your husband might be negative about someone, and just saying, "Hey, let's not do that." Because that really, being in a negative environment also drains.
Yeah.
Start doing that and kind of like thinking, like, if you're in your deathbed tomorrow and you look back over your life, have you done the things that you wanted to do? And what are the things that bring you joy? And we're like, "Well, I don't know. I'm okay, going getting a manicure and a pedicure." I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. That's all good at first." And
Mm.
then, what are the ones underneath that?
Mm.
Can it be giving yourself 3 minutes? 1 minute a day. Just put a timer on. Do a little body check. What's going on? Where are my emotions at? How am I feeling? What's that body sensation going on? It's like, "Oh, actually, my breath is really quick. My heartbeat's quick. Oh, what's going on?" Just recognizing, what do I need? Do I want some touch? I mean, I can go on about touch forever because it's physical touch is so important, and they've done so many studies that if babies don't get actual
Mm.
physical touch, they go down a certain route, and if they do get touch, then they're much more likely to succeed. But are you getting the kind of touch that you want in your marriage? Do you have date mornings set up? Because I say don't go to the date evenings because you'll be tired, but make a date mornings. And what do you talk about? Is it always the kids or business, or do you talk about your dreams together? Do you ask for the kind of touch that you want? So
But I can hear people saying now, date mornings. How can we do date mornings? We're all busy working, or, you
I know,
know,
but on a Saturday or a Sunday when your kids, if they're teenagers, if they're in bed, can you
yeah.
can you schedule in actually 60 minutes where it's like, "Hey, mommy and daddy are gonna have us time." And Yeah, I've created these cards. Where are they? They're here. We're just looking at this. I call them communication and intimacy cards. So they're just prompts, and like they're little prompts, little questions you can ask yourself. Like yesterday, we did it with my about my sister. I said, "Tell me what your mother meant to you. What were the qualities that you loved about her?" And here, like one of the ones on beliefs, emotions, I have. Tell me what winning means to you. Right? Like when have you had the last time
Yeah.
with your husband and talked about that? Or like tell me a story that had a great impact on you. It's like you might not think it's like, oh, date morning is gonna be like really all hot and sexy. It's like, yeah, that's great. And sometimes you actually need that emotional connection first.
I think we're starved of that as well. Just generally
Completely.
starved of that because it's like when do people actually have those sorts of conversations?
That's why I created them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And so it's just like, tell me where do you see us in 20 years? When the kids are grown up, what would be a dream? We don't even have to go there, but it might just be fun to kind of like think about that. It's like,
Yeah,
what's,
rather than arriving at the place where the kids have gone and now it's you don't know what to do with yourself because you've been in a certain mode for so many years and now you're just lost because you haven't actually thought beyond.
but that's what we see, right? That's where a lot of people start thinking like, the kids are gone. What are we doing together? I mean, we don't have much to talk about anymore. And then the husband retires and there's even less to talk about. And yeah, they're both on their computers doing their own thing. And it's like disconnection. I think we live in a very disconnected world where we're glued on our screens and we don't really know how to have a communication or a conversation anymore. And we don't have to agree with what the other person says, but to be heard and understood and ultimately be loved. I think that's what all of us want.
Are we comfortable in our busyness because it helps us to not go to uncomfortable places in our own minds or have to deal with things that we find uncomfortable? So the busyness just helps us to be distracted and focused elsewhere.
Absolutely. And I'm so,
Yeah.
yeah, completely can hold my hand up saying, yeah, I was one of the busy bees. And then yeah, I consciously schedule in time. I knew that today I had the interview review and I would have just come back and there were like 5,000 other things on my diary that my assistant had slotted in. So we're supposed to have a team meeting and I just cancelled. I cancelled last week already. And this, not at 1 o'clock, she's like, "Oh, we're not having a team meeting." I'm like, no, no, we're not. I had already told her, but it's like I know how I'm gonna feel, and today was really like I just recognized I've had a big weekend. So
Yeah.
beautiful weather here. I've stuck my feet in the grass. I've given myself that time and not go, 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 go.
So it could be argued, though, that because you run your own company,
Oh,
you
completely.
have the, what's the word, that control over your time
Oh
that you're
yeah, I
able
have the
to do that.
luxury of like scheduling in my own time. Absolutely. And it doesn't always have to be that, you take a full day off or anything. But it's like where can you just bring in little micro moments? Right? Instead of maybe going on your phone on social media, where can you put on, I don't know, a meditation app or a breathing app or do some box breathing for 2, 3 minutes or do that touch base little thing that I showed you, that kinesthetic anchor, just so that you start working on yourself. And it could be writing out your emotions, journaling. And if you don't like writing it, speaking it out in your phone.
Mm.
A lot of these things really just work. Going
So
out to,
if you're in a corporate environment,
yes,
there are still things you can do.
absolutely. You can go to the loo for 2 minutes and sit there and actually use your finger and your thumb and your finger and use that touch base. And then also that's why I have those four the image, thought, body sensation, emotion. If you move yourself through that, you actually start to recognize it's like, oh, I've been so much of my thinking cap. I haven't even breathed properly. My breath is very stuck in my chest. So just spend like 3 times a day, 2 minutes on yourself before you get in the door. If you're in the car or if you're just outside the door, if you take public transport, can you slow down for like 2, 3 minutes and just let your day go? Right? Because so often we see people come back at home and they're still stressed. And then the wife says, "Hey, how are you?" Or the husband says, "How are you?" Or the kids are like, "Hey, mommy," it's like immediately you get bombarded while you have
Mm.
yourself anytime.
And what's the cost of not doing this?
This is what I see of my clients. This is what I see with me. What happens is that we either get burned out or, there's some disease that happens.
Okay. So the things you were mentioning, so the touch base, the box breathing, the journaling, they're all pattern interrupters. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can, so once you start writing, then you can sort of actually, oh yeah, actually I can sense that I'm actually quite rigid and stressed.
Hmm.
So if I realize that, then I do what? Is that when box breathing comes in or
I would definitely say box breathing. What are I mean there's some beautiful prompts, right? It's like so tell me what's something that you love doing that you used to love doing as a kid. These are the questions that I ask my clients. And it's kind of like, oh, you haven't thought about that. So that's what you can write about or speak about. But really start recognizing, are you actually leading the life that you want to lead at the moment? What are the things that you can start bringing in that you want to have more of? Is that, leaving your phone outside the bedroom, making sure that, at 9 o'clock you start winding down, you don't have blue light anymore, maybe you read a book. Maybe, you read one poem a night. Maybe share with your children, just saying, "Hey, tell me what was one thing that you really liked about your day." Because everyone's always so focused on the negative, but you can start bringing this into the family as well. What is that? Tell me what was one thing that you loved. And in the beginning, they'll be like, nothing. But
mm,
after a while, they'll actually start saying, "Oh, this was really cool. I really enjoyed that." And start being grateful for those things, right? Because we're so often worried about our health or the finances or the kids or the husband, whatever is happening, that we put attention on that. And the more that we put attention on the things that don't go so well, that becomes then we become obsessed by that instead of recognizing, like, oh, this was good about my day. I mean, I used to have a really good, but I don't always do it anymore. I used to have a really good practice is before going to bed, is write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And now oftentimes with Alex, I'll just turn to him and say, "Hey, this was beautiful about my day, that." And also like yesterday, I must have thanked him 5 times for picking me up and coming inside. But also instead of just saying thank you for doing that, I I explained to him, said, first of all, thank you, but it really meant a lot to me because, yeah, I was so emotionally spent. And to have you there pick me up, just I felt really supported and very grounded. So that you give them a little insight into what's going on in your world.
so I saw in your newsletter the other day that you did some body work. I think something had come up and you did some body work. And that you then ended up feeling unwell for a couple of. So I think that's why I hold back from doing certain things because I know that my body responds really strongly. But so I'm thinking, well, if I go have that massage or whatever, I'm going to feel ill for a week. afterwards. I'm going to feel like I'm coming down with flu or something like that. And I haven't got time to, I haven't got time to feel ill. So can you sort of talk me through like why do these things happen? Why does your body go into that?
So I
As if
have,
you felt like you got the flu or chills or a
yeah,
fever.
completely. So my left hip, I had a left hip operation about a year and a half ago, and then my right one has been acting up, and it's not quite the same thing. And I knew this body worker is incredible. So yeah, he's kind of like my magician. But I also know like yeah, my body was just it just I tried everything. I couldn't actually get it to unlock myself. So I was feeling great coming home. Next morning I was okay, and then all of a sudden it hit, and I was like sniffling, and then like face was running. I was having all of a sudden I had fever and everything. It's like, oh, interesting. So the beautiful thing is that if you can really become an observer of what's happening and actually just seeing the body, it's like, okay, so that apparently that's been stuck in my system for so long. So now it has to come out and not be on the timelines like, yeah, but I have to get to work. I have to do certain things. What I did is I canceled my mastermind and I just said, guys, I'm just not going to be of any good to you. Yes, I could badger on and go on and give you and perform and do my thing, but that's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm teaching you to do.
Mm.
And I can't be teaching my things and not walking the walk. So what I did is I just canceled and we rescheduled for the week afterwards, which was actually beautiful for everyone. But yeah, very often it's like, but that doesn't fit on my timeline. We can schedule in a massage between 5 and 6, and then 7 and 7:15. I'm picking, I'm cooking for the kids, etc. So we have such a strict timeline is that we don't actually give ourselves that space if something might go off.
See, the other day I was having a massage. Um, it depends on how deep the masseur masseuse goes, as to whether I get that feeling ill sort of reaction. But it happens with a lot of different things. If my body goes into a deep relaxation, I will have a reaction to it. But what happened the other day, which has never happened before, is I suddenly just started crying.
Hmm.
I was like, where the hell is this coming from?
Emotional release. Beautiful. Yeah.
And then it's like, well, that's embarrassing. What the hell am I crying for?
Doesn't matter. It's actually because your body is and you're being held in a beautiful safe space. I do something called spinal attunement, so I work on people's bodies as well and also online in in their emotional bodies. And oftentimes that's you just have to like go near a point and that will release a lot of emotions. They've been stored. You've been holding on to them. It hasn't felt appropriate. It hasn't felt the time for it. And then all of a sudden, because your body relaxes, you might start crying. You might start moving, convulsing. This is all part of it.
Okay.
And it might not always be so pretty. So that's why people are like, oh my God, this whole, yeah, working on ourselves. Do we need
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. So we need to pattern interrupt and check in with ourselves throughout the day and do something to, if we recognize that we're in a stress state, do an exercise or something that regulates our nervous system, which you were calling micro moments. And all of this is helping to maintain health and well-being, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then added to that, would you then say you should regularly do some sort of body work?
I would say that, but I also know what people's schedules are like. So, and I even know my own, right? Where I'd been putting this off, thing like, yeah, I can do this myself. I have all the tools for it. I'm doing all this stuff online. And then at one point, it was like, okay, body is now just screaming at me. It's like, how can we actually just listen to our body a little bit more? And sometimes it's a whisper. And sometimes it's just like, just go outside. Go outside for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, feel the sun on your face. Go for a little walk. Go a bit slower. Like I have children that walk really fast at the airport. They're like rushing, and I'm like, I'll see you at the gates. I'm gonna go my way because otherwise I pull my hips slightly out of alignment and I'm in pain for the rest of the day. But it's taken me a long time to actually just say, just you go ahead. And to my partner as well, because he hurries, everyone hurries. And I'm like, I'm actually walking at a slower pace now because it suits me. And then in Holland, everyone's so tall that, it's like their legs are up to my armpits. So, but yeah, it's like, how do we even go at our own pace?
Yeah.
How do we know? And this is where I come to touch. It's like people are so quick. It's like, oh, I'll do this and I'll get off and then I'll have an orgasm. That'll be good for us, and that's how we connect. I'm like, yeah. How about we slow it down by about half and then again half, and it's gonna feel so uncomfortable because you're not used to going that slow.
So your work, let's get to your work because in the you're in the intimacy space. So do you do two different things? The intimacy work and trauma work, or is that
It's kind of
intertwined?
like all intertwined. Yeah. I mean, I also coach coaches and therapists. So yes, it's once you start moving in this realm, there's just a lot.
Okay.
It's all intertwined because I think you so often couples come to me or women come to me saying that, yeah, they're not having the sex that they want, or they're not having any sex, or they're not feeling much. And it is because they've been so busy being busy. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I can schedule in a meet, I can schedule in a session between 5 and 6, and then I've got something 6:30 onwards. And it's like,
Yeah, that's sad,
and
isn't it?
then all of a sudden we hit some bits and they start crying and they're releasing and they're like, oh, but no, I have to cancel my other one, my thing afterwards. It's like, yes, it's deep work. It's not a quick fix. It doesn't mean that it has to be long drawn out, but it's like, let's start with getting some of these questions. Where do you like to be touched? Do you even know what it feels like to touch yourself? Do you take enough time to maybe touch your face, your hands? What does it feel like to rub your fingers together and really be conscious about it? So, I mean, any moment can just be a mindful moment. Putting on
Yeah, I remember at one of the Essence lunches, um, you made us savor, um, was it a piece of chocolate or a piece of, some dessert that we had, whereas normally we would just, or I would anyway.
It's consciously eating, right?
Yeah,
I did this last time. I blindfolded everyone. So I took that added something else to it, right? So it's like just blindfolding it and then smelling the food. So first of all, the blindfolding for some people, not us. It's like, does anyone have problems with this? Because
yeah.
when you take away one of the senses, it heightens the other ones, but say if you have had some kind of abuse, it's often scary. So I've worked as a dominatrix as well, so I know all this stuff. I can read the body signs very well. Um, but at the same time, it's also like, how quickly do we eat? How do we actually savor our food? Can you take a grape and look at it? Like observe it and then smell it and then maybe touch your face and touch your lips. And then, open your lips. And what does it feel like? Is it cold? What's the temperature like? Then bite down on it and then really slowly let those juices go down your throat. It's like, oh, I don't think I actually ever really recognized that grapes are so juicy or whatever it is,
Mm,
right? But this is
yeah.
you can be really mindful about touch, obviously. This is what feeding for me is also touch, right? That's a sensory touch. About hearing. And this is also, but then again, that goes into trauma because what are the things that I bring people back? It's like, okay, what can you hear? What can you smell? What can you see? Right? To bring them back to the moment. With the EMDR, I use eye movements to move people through something. You use the cross body thing so the different brain hemispheres get linked in. So I mean, so it's all intermingled. You can't just do one thing without having all the other parts in it and or having them in your toolbox and using them whenever needed.
But do you specifically then work on only sexual trauma and no?
No, I don't. I really work at the moment. What I've just come up with is a touch toolkit, reboot kit, actually. So a touch reboot kit. So to learn how to have touch again, how to have conversations like this, like the diet, the prompts that I gave you, one or two of them. It's like, yeah, tell me, what does intimacy mean to you? It's like, what have you been taught about sex? And what have I been taught about sex? We might think it's something completely different. What would you like to, what kind of touch would you like to experience that I've never given you? Most people will never ask their partner that. It's like we also don't know how to adjust people, right? Can you go a little bit slower? Could you move to the left a little bit? So in my touch reboot kit, I have a video and I took this TV couple through a tea exercise where one prepares a cup of tea for the other person in exactly the way that they want to. So person A makes the tea. Person A basically, person A gives the instructions. I want tea in my really fine ribbed little teacup, this much milk in it, a splash of honey, tea bag out, etc. So partner B goes and does that. Partner A receives it. It's like, oh, thank you for bringing the tea. And sees that this tea bag's still in. It's too much, not in the cup that they want. But what do you do? As a woman, what do? We usually say, oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks, that's sweet. But no, it's not what we asked for. So it's like, okay, thank you for making that. And could you go back and take the tea bag out, put it in a different cup, put it in the cup that you asked for, and add a splash of cold water. And then go back and forth as long until they get it right. So, giving them a little shit sandwich, like something good, something good, right? Um, and people are like, why are you doing this? I'm like, because if you know how to adjust for tea, then it's not so scary to do that in the bedroom too. They're like, oh my God, this is genius. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the fun part, right? But all what comes up there is like men don't like to be adjusted sometimes. What comes up for them? What comes up for the woman? Like, oh my God, we're a high maintenance woman. If we ask for so many things.
Mm.
It's like all this societal conditioning comes up. And then if you do this I do this in workshops often with people from different ethnicities and backgrounds. It's just hilarious what comes up. Something as simple as making a cup of tea.
Wow. Okay.
We've
So,
meandered all over.
yeah. So to kind of try and round off around the trauma, stress, mind, body thing, we've covered um, why it's important to check in with ourselves, to pattern interrupt, um, to try and regulate ourselves. And there's so many different ways we can do that. Like you were saying, journaling, box breathing, touch base. And there's many others, even just walking for 10 minutes or so, especially with the weather like this. Um, and perhaps for more deeper work, you can do some body work. Um,
Absolutely. How
but
do
as Gabor was saying, it's a trajectory. It's always going to be a work in progress.
Mhm.
You're not necessarily going to arrive.
It's always a journey, right? It's we just think, oh my God, we're gonna be fixed. It's like, what about you're never broken, but you're always just a work in progress, right? And you'll find another piece of like unfulfillment or another piece. It's like, oh shoot, I didn't know that I still got triggered by people doing this. I was on a coaching call earlier this morning and one of the coaches was gaslighting one of the participants there, and I just looked at that. I was like, fuck me, holy shit. But I was like, I don't want to be in this anymore. I'm like, oh, hello, I've got some work to do because that kind of like brought up
Mm.
something for me. Like, gosh, you should be more trauma informed. I'm like, no, actually would work on your own stuff. So I did that, reached out and just said, hey, that little phrase, you might just, want to consider looking at what that actually means or checking in with this lady, what happened. Because I can see what things happen. But it was just beautiful for me to also see it's like, where do I still get triggered all the time? Right. And where are those beautiful little glimmers where it's like, oh, hey, I'm still human, right? It doesn't matter how much work I've done, how much things I've done on myself, there are still ways that I fuck up, right? Or I don't get it
Mm.
right. And we're all having this beautiful human experience. And end of the day, we want to be connected with other people. So how can we do that? Can we find a group that we love? Can we go to a woman's group once a month or so? Or what is it, a sound bath or yoga? Or, there's so many ways to start looking at this, something online. Do you want to go through a program?
All with a view.
More podcasts.
Yeah. And this is all with a view to keeping ourselves relatively in balance. We're not going to get to a place where we're in balance and we hold it, but it's just being able to almost navigate those ups and downs in a way that we're giving ourselves the best chance of being the healthiest we can be.
Absolutely. I kind of see it like as going to the gym, right? You can go one time, but are you going to be like super buff and like, do you have the body that you want? Or are you going to continue going to classes and getting better at stuff? That's what I would say your nervous system or trauma, intimacy, all of these things, we're just getting tools to notice that how we go through life in a less activated state. That it's like when you're driving down the street, you don't get as activated when people cut you off anymore when you say meditate a little bit more or do some box breathing or know your emotions, right? You don't explode at other people anymore. But it's also a work in process.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
I think listening to podcasts are a great way of doing it. Going for a walk, listening to podcasts. I mean, you could do from A to Z, right? There are so many ways you can spend zero money on it and just listen to podcasts to spending, I don't know, hundreds of thousands.
yeah, yeah.
It's all
So,
available.
so people, because I just really want to get across that this is all of these things we were talking about to me are not they're essentials is what I'm trying to say. Essentials to us being um healthy, to having our nervous system regulation, um sort of just keeping that in check so that we're not going through life in a rigid. And if we are like we identify, I'm back into that state, what do I do about it? Okay, I know I can do this or that. And if I don't, because everything's a choice, I can choose to stay in this state because I'm too busy to do anything about it. But I accept that staying in this
Of
state for a
consequences.
prolonged period of time does is not good for my body or my health.
I think that's it, right? Recognizing it's a choice. Everything in life is a choice. If you want to continue being stressed and working in that environment, there will be consequences. And this is just the whole thing. Can you just put in little things a few times a day, repeatable little wins with your husband, with your children, and then all of a sudden, before knowing what you're putting this in every day, and then all of a sudden that becomes easy, so you can add a little bit more, and it's just it becomes a much nicer way to live a conscious life. You all of a sudden start caring about other people on the street. You don't just walk past an old lady on the pavement.
Mm.
Like, can I help you? It's living slightly more conscious about yourself, about your own health, also has you more conscious about other people.
And then hopefully you become more of an advocate for yourself, more, you give yourself more agency to even be able to say, I can do this for you, or but I can't do any more, or I can only do it here, rather than thinking, oh, I must do it, otherwise it's gonna, you know, regardless of what it means to me, I must do that. Otherwise, how will it look if I don't know, stay late again? Or it's having those non-negotiables that are important because they're about your well-being. And if you have those non-negotiables, you're then more likely to be at your best, which means you can show up better for everyone else around you
Completely.
and yourself.
Completely, completely. Because I mean, you've all seen like the very stressed mother that just isn't that nice to be with. And then we as women get things like, oh, you must be on your period. Where it's like, no, actually, we're just stressed because there's a lot on our plate.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the husband is just going to take a massage, you know? And it's like, but you've had a massage. Why aren't you happy now? It's like, because it's years of built stuff. So yeah, so standard, rather than calling everything boundaries, I call them standards because it's just like, these are my standards. So standard is like, if you're going to speak to me that way, I'm going to take myself out of the room. I will not be spoken to that way.
Mm.
But yeah,
Well,
it's
you have a
all these things
podcast.
are just really start becoming aware, right? I mean, this is where I started my podcast. This is why you started your podcast because you want other people to start becoming aware of how they can just implement little things that will make their life so much better.
And your podcast is in the top 2.5% of podcasts worldwide.
Yes, yes, it went
Um,
really, really viral for a while. That was really interesting. Yeah, I started that about a year and a half ago. It's called The Scrumptious Woman. So we're on Spotify and Apple and all the things. Um, and it really started out by knowing that we all have energy. I mean, right, we're made out of energy. So we all have these codes that we carry, and that, you know, not only the information, but sometimes people can only already hear or pick up the energy from just listening to us. It doesn't always have to be the cognitive information in the brain. But through that is where I'm like, I'm giving something back. Not everyone can work with me one-to-one. Not everyone wants to work with me one-to-one or in a group setting even. This means I can reach people all over the world and they'll get something out of it. So that's why I started it. And yeah, I think we're over 375,000 downloads. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey because that's quite a bit of visibility, right? And so people
yeah,
are like,
yeah.
oh, I want to be this visible. So I want to talk about these quite taboo subjects from time to time, but I interview a lot of guests that I think is also just really important to help share. There's no scarcity here in the world. If we can actually just share each other's brilliance and someone can get something out of it, it's perfect.
So do you cover is it taboo subjects, or what sorts of things do you cover?
I started really about sensuality, sexuality, trauma, death, because I've had, yeah, I'm a death doula. I've helped several people pass over. So a lot of grief, just a lot of, I think the first 10 episodes are solo episodes, a lot about my life and how I've helped people, about my clients. And then I've just started interviewing more and more people. Some people, last week it was a money coach who helps with finances and really investment. Sometimes there are some sales coaches. There are some trauma experts that I've had, people from all over the world and all over different walks of life as well. I've had a pop star on. It's just been really fun.
Wow. So it actually sounds pretty varied.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the realness, can we have a real conversation, right? A bit like questions on your mind. For me, it was like,
Yeah.
how can we live a scrumptious life that actually we are true to ourselves? We are true to that energy running through our bodies.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Juliette. We've just been all over the show on trauma and stress, and but I think I like to let the conversation go where it goes and bring out what it needs to bring out. So that's what we've done today. We've got all your details in your bio. If anyone does, can anyone still work with you one on
Yeah,
one?
absolutely. I,
Yeah.
I still do some one-to-ones. And I don't know if I actually gave you anything, but I have this touch reboot kit. So why don't I'll send
Yeah,
you a
we can add that to the
I
show
can add
notes.
that to the listeners, and then they get 75% off or something. Then it becomes like a no-brainer. It's
Yeah.
111 pounds anyway, but if I give 75 pounds, 75% off, then it becomes like, I don't know, 20 something pounds, whatever.
Yeah, and we've touched on so many different areas that I think are other podcast episodes, if you get what I mean, because we haven't, and I probably need to build some bravery to go to some of those topics, but the whole intimacy side of things and issues that couples have and all of that kind of stuff, but that would be another podcast and
That's perfect.
yeah,
We don't have to
probably
cover it all in one day.
but that would yeah, I'll probably need to do some internal adjustment before bringing that one to the audience, but I'm sure it's one that people would love to hear. Um, so yeah, let's have a think about that.
Beautiful.
Um, I absolutely love your presence, and I love the whole. You just bring that sensuality. You just live it. Even when you were talking to us about, tasting the food and the way you do that, it's just yeah, it just caused me to think a lot more about the way I bolt my food because I'm always in a hurry, and just slowing down and being more sensual about everything.
It's
So yeah,
involving your senses, right? And that could be one of the things that you're just more conscious of. It's like this week, okay, let me focus on taking 7 minutes to gulp down my food instead of three.
yeah,
Whatever the three is, like every bite, let me just bite it 5 times instead of twice and swallow.
yeah, yeah,
It's the little steps. It's just awareness, right? It's
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much for
It's been
having
an absolute pleasure to have you on. Guys, please do like, share, and subscribe. This is such an important topic, trauma and stress, mind-body connection. I think is a must for everyone to have a listen to and just have a think about how they can start um, regulating themselves better through life for just to be at their optimum, really. So. I will see you next time on Questions on My Mind. Thank you, Juliette. Please don't go anywhere. I will stop the recording and we um, we can say our goodbyes off camera. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.